flips me a bad body. So it's another one, yeah. It's a
Hello and welcome to Green Diamond Boxing, powered by iBoxingHub. My name is Aiysha, and before we get started, a quick shout out to our sponsors D-Rock. Please check out the clothing on their website and add promo code iBoxingHub24 for 40% discount on all their clothing. So today I'm continuing the Getting to Know the iBoxingHub family series, and today I've got one of my other iBoxingHub brothers, Rah. Hi Rah, how are you today?
How are you, darling? It's Christmas, New Year, all of that party season. So yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
How are
How's
you?
it been for you? How's the holidays been for you?
Oh, fantastic. Had a great week. Got the place to myself.
Nice.
Yeah, and as you can see, still in party mode. So
yeah,
one more party tomorrow, and then 2025 starts. And yeah,
quick.
looking forward. It's been
So,
a fab year.
Yeah, loads to talk about today. I know you don't have a lot of time, so we'll get straight into it. There's loads of things that I want to find out about you, about your background. You've been doing podcasts and media work for quite some time. I don't know how much people really know about you and your background. So I'm just going to start off by asking you to let everybody know what you want them to know about you in terms of your background, your childhood, growing up. How was life for you growing up?
Life growing up, boy, that's so long ago. I'm a child of the 80s, which I still maintains the best decade. And yeah, I was brought up in a British Bengali family where sports is totally, it's just not a thing. Incidentally, look out on New Year's Day on Punchout Boxing. I have got an interview with the head of the Bangladesh Professional Boxing Commission coming out on New Year's Day. And he actually said the same thing, that culturally, sports just isn't a thing amongst Bengalis, probably for a lot of the Indian subcontinent, apart from cricket, of course. Anyway, but yeah, I was... Yes, I can remember when I got into the two main sports that I followed for my whole life, football and boxing, and they were both in the same year, 1986. So
No
I'd be
way.
9 years old, yeah. And
wow, I was 1.
Yeah, thanks for that, Aiysha. Yes, I am nearly 50 years old, 50 going on 15, of course. But yeah, 1986 was a hell of a year for sport. So I can actually tell you my earliest sort of boxing memory. It was, in fact, Frank Bruno's unsuccessful challenge against Tim Witherspoon for the weight championship of the world at Wembley. The reason it was my first memory is because it was big news. You take it for granted because you've only got into boxing in recent years. But back then, when a British fighter challenged for the world title, especially at heavyweight, it was big news. So yeah, that was all in the news. And I remember that fight. I don't think I watched it live. It must have been the highlights the next day. But it, of course, ended with Bruno getting stopped the way he did in his career when he gassed out, helpless on the ropes, getting bludgeoned. So it was really special how just a few months ago, I actually interviewed Tim Witherspoon and was actually able to ask him about that. And obviously I made a point of telling him that you are actually my earliest boxing memory. So that's when I first got into boxing. Yeah, that was my first sort of interest I took in it. few months later, that summer, the Mexico '86 World Cup started, and the whole school became football mad. And that was where I first got interested in football.
Right.
And that World Cup, of course, was most famous for Diego Maradona's genius, which to this day I still think the level he reached in his prime is the highest level of any footballer ever. Anyway,
Wow.
that's a different thing. But so yeah, I started to play football. I always wanted to try boxing over the years, but couldn't primarily because there was no boxing gyms anywhere near me. So anyway, so I was playing football for years. It was very. I was good sometimes, not so good other times. Yeah, so I loved sports in that way. Not only playing it, I would try and learn everything I could about it. I was always reading up things, getting all the magazines. This might be hard for you and your younger viewers to appreciate, but there was a time where we had to get most of our knowledge from reading, believe it or not. Yeah,
yes,
there weren't
I am of that generation as well, Rah, where we had to go to libraries and look up things in encyclopedias because there was no internet. So yeah, I do remember that time.
Exactly that. There was a great boxing magazine called Boxing Monthly. It's now defunct. It was a great magazine. It came out monthly. I was a subscriber to that. I would rush out every week to get the boxing news. Our colleagues, of course, Andy Purewell and Rob Tevitt, of course, they're now involved in that. I think their channel half took it over. So, wow, who'd have thought? But anyway, yeah, I'd get that. That would give us, all the British domestic stuff. And of course, monthly, the Ring magazine from America. We had to read that to get to know all about the American fights. Yeah, so I really, I was like really just filling my head with knowledge about football, about boxing. And yeah, much to, my parents' disdain because, like I said, that generation, Asian parents, sports, where you're taking an interest in that, you should be spending all your time doing extra study.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I grew up with that, following those sports.
So in terms of your love of sport, do you still love football just as much as you have before? Or, I mean, because you do the media stuff around boxing. I don't know whether you do anything around football with that kind of thing. Do you do?
No,
No.
absolutely not. In fact, I would say in recent years, I've really fallen out of love with the football because it's really become for me such a sanitized game. Like there just aren't the personalities anymore. It's so politically correct. It's such a money go round. It's like a corporate thing. So yeah, I really don't even follow it much anymore. Most fans have been priced out of the game. I mean, you try and go to a Premier League football game. Tottenham's my local club. I've not been to a Premier League game at the new ground yet. I mean, it's just so expensive. But hey, look, if you're going to pay players tens or even hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, that money's got to come from somewhere. So yeah, I've really fallen out of love with it. It's okay. I did a few of the things I really wanted to, like I went to the World Cup in Brazil in 2014, and that was what probably the greatest footballing experience I had. And I would definitely recommend any football fans, if you can ever, get to a South American World Cup. Unfortunately, the way the World Cup now is, it might be a long, long time before we ever see that again. Because it seems to be that the World Cup's now split across continents, and it just ain't the same. But believe you me, I remember going to a match, Brazil versus Mexico. Yeah, it was a group game because my colleague at the time, my supervisor at work, he actually had a friend who worked for FIFA. So he was keeping in touch with me from London, saying, yeah, if you can meet this guy at this place, he can give you leftover corporate tickets. So I got into quite a few games for free. Imagine that. So anyway, Brazil v Mexico. I mean, all my Brazilian friends were like, God, how do you, a foreigner, come over here and get tickets to our home country's World Cup game? But I tell you, walking to the stadium, because I got there a bit late, just as it was about to kick off. You know, even probably 100 meters or so away from the stadium, walking towards it, you could feel the atmosphere. Yeah, emanating from the stadium. This was in Fortaleza, which is in the northeast of Brazil. It was like, you know, in Gladiator, when Maximus first sees the Colosseum and they can feel the throb of the crowd from outside. It was like that. And even though the game was pretty poor, it was 0-0. When you're there immersed in the atmosphere, it doesn't feel. It was. So yeah, that was great. I went to the Euros in France 2016 when Portugal won it. But yeah, I guess, like I said, probably in the last couple of years, the way the game has gone, I've fallen out of love with it a bit. So
that's sad. Yeah,
it is now number one for me.
So Abbas is saying, firstly, he said, has Santa shaved his beard? And then he said, you completed football already, so need to visit a rubbish team like Spurs.
Oh my God, Abbas, I'll have you know, interestingly, my mates at TM14 are planning on doing a show at Stamford Bridge, his beloved Chelsea. So keep an eye out. Yeah, but Chelsea, that's what I think of them. So yeah.
And I think Andrew likes your red color, so looking good in red. So obviously, coming back to the boxing, then you've been watching boxing for a very long time. But how long have you been doing the media side of it, going to shows and doing interviews and that kind of thing? How long have you been doing that for?
I can actually tell you precisely, because it was, I think, 2021.
Is that when you started your Instagram? Because I scrolled down right to the bottom of your Instagram. You've got over 1,000 posts. And on the 23rd of September, 2021 was your first post on Masood Abdullah before he did his pro debut. So would that be the first time?
Yeah. I mean, that sounds about right. You say September 2021. Okay, you've done the homework for me. Yeah, it would have been around that time, because so how I got into it, I was going to boxing matches anyway as a fan. Right. The large shows, small shows. I was going to quite a few small shows as well as a fan. And I met a guy there, Abdul Munim. He's actually involved in the sport himself now. I made friends with him because he's Bengali as well. Yeah.
Right.
No, not just because he's Bengali. I've got friends of all backgrounds. Yeah. But we got talking, and he was telling me how his son is turning professional. I was intrigued because I thought his son would be the first British Bengali professional boxer, Jahid. Anyway, so we became friends, and then he introduced me to John Trathuri, who you've spoke to, of TM14 Promotions. Now, at the time, John was one of the UK media for the American channel, The Boxing Voice. So we got talking, and John said, "Yeah, look, you know a lot about this. If you want to do some media stuff, you don't get paid, but you get ringside seats, and you get to meet all the fighters." And I thought, oh yeah, well, that sounds brilliant. Sign me up. So yeah, he actually sort of said, "Yeah, look, hit me up. I'll get you involved." And it turns out the reason he actually was looking for someone to take over from him, because he's now a promoter, and he knew he wouldn't have time to do it. So yeah, I guess God delivered us to each other in that way. So yeah, he said, let me try you out. And so he actually arranged for us to meet up at a nearby boxing gym to me, Hoddesdon Boxing Club, which is in Hertfordshire. And he said, yeah, look, there's a couple of guys there worth interviewing. And Sam Gilly was there.
Right.
He was time the English champion. Sam, of course, is now the Commonwealth champ and in line for the British title at 154 pounds. Anyway, so he said, yeah, try him out. So yeah, Sam Gilly was my first ever interview. So I literally just looked up his record and boxed it, asked him a few questions, went fine, spoke to a couple other guys at the gym. And then at the end, none other than Hamza Shiraz came.
Yeah.
Because he finishing his camp. He'd just come back from California. And so Hamza was essentially the first star, if you like, that I interviewed. So all of that was on my first day trial, if you like.
Wow.
Anyway, I send the recordings to John, and he was like, oh, yeah, fine. You know, I want to fast track you from taking over from me because, I can't really do this. So he introduced me to Dave, who was sort of like in charge of the UK reporting for them.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, yeah, look, he's good enough. I ain't got the time to do this. So let Rashid take over from me. So that's where it started. And I think it was just a week later, Dave asked me, can you go to this press conference in London? And it was for Josh Taylor against Jack Catterall.
Was it?
So,
right.
So you can see I was going pretty much straight in the deep end. Yeah, it weren't like a small hall level. So that was great. And
Punchout Boxing, is that yours and Dave's, or was that Dave's and then he kind of brought you on?
Yeah, it was Dave's. Now, what happened was about 6 months in, the Boxing Voice, they had a change of tack. They decided they didn't want no more UK stuff, I guess, because UK fight nights, Americans generally aren't interested. So, yeah, we were dumped by them. Okay. So me and Dave thought, oh, well, what can we do? Should we try and go to another channel? But Dave had actually built a lot of contacts over the years because he'd been doing it for years. Mm-hmm. So he messaged all the, the media guys and just asked them, we're going to start our own thing. Can we still get in? And they were like, yeah, of course, fine. And because he had the Facebook page, Punchout Boxing started as a Facebook page. And in actual fact, our Facebook page sometimes does a lot better views. So I think for a certain demographic, Facebook is still quite a big thing in terms of social media. And we thought to start with, well, you know what, there's enough YouTube channels anyway, so maybe this is better. It gives promoters a different sort of platform to get coverage. So we pretty much, it was just a hiccup. We just carried on as ever. And so, in these last, 2-3 years, no, I think it's only been 2 years, Punchout Boxing has grown dramatically. And I'm proud of what we've done because a lot of it is down to our work. As I like to make a point of, I will go to a lot of the small hall shows as well as and I find that's actually worked really well. I haven't looked back. I'm loving every minute of it. As you know, I've been to the biggest of big shows, such as the Fury Usyk fights, some of the Riyadh season fights, and I'll go to the most obscure shows where often I'm the only media there. So it's been a great couple of years journey. So absolutely loving it.
Tell me about when you started doing interviews, because your background is not in media, is it? That's not something that you kind of started. How did you feel actually starting up doing the questions and doing the interviews? Did it feel weird? Did you feel nervous doing that at first? Obviously, you've got a lot of boxing knowledge and you have done for a long time, so that probably wasn't a worry for you. But in terms of just asking questions and things, was that a bit of an issue or not?
No, not really. Questions in itself, no, because I followed the sport for so long. Like you said, I think I do have enough knowledge to ask, appropriate things. It was more just the fact that I'd never done any sort of public speaking or, as you said, like, it's not my work background. I don't have no journalistic background or, like I said, even public speaking. So was there nerves? Not really, because I guess because I'm not really the focus of it because I don't really generally even appear on camera. That's our style of interview. So yeah, I think it went all, and like I said, the first couple of interviews went so well that, I mean, if you have like a disaster when you start out, that can probably hit someone's confidence. But because the first few went well, yeah, I guess I never really had any issues there. I would say that the issue is now, as time's gone on, sort of, I wonder if maybe my interview questions and styles, maybe it's getting a bit stale, if it's like the same old sort of questions. Because I know a lot of people like your interviews because you ask different questions. It could just be, again, though, because of the sort of fighters I'm interviewing, like at the small hall level, generally you're getting novices. So you're going to, not really much you can ask them, if you get me. And when it comes to the bigger fight nights, obviously, you know, at our level, we don't often get access to the main fighters. So yeah, because it might just be because the sort of fighters I'm interviewing, they're pretty much at the same stage of their careers. I'll tell you what I have noticed. I think the best interviews I do is when they're usually the coaches or managers, because they're closer to my age. Coaches in particular. So I think probably the best interviews I've done was someone like, say, Tim Witherspoon. So much to talk about, you know, childhood memories, all of that. Clarissa Shields' coach, John David Jackson, did a great interview with him. And that was actually after the very first fight night I did, because it was in Wales when Eubank fought Liam Williams. And Clarissa Shields was on the undercard. So her coach, John David Jackson, he was on one of the great 90s fight nights. Again, a memory from my youth. So I had a lot to talk to him about. And a lot of the viewers, in fact, of that interview actually said, well, yeah, it's a great interview. But a lot of these youngsters, I mean, how much am I going to connect with a 20-year-old? Other than asking about their first fight or whatever. So, yeah.
It's true. Sometimes I forget like how big the age gap is between me and some of the people I'm talking to. So like obviously Moses, right? He's literally just turned 20. He's like almost 20 years my junior. So, but yeah, it's one of those things. It is important, I think, to kind of build that rapport up with someone, and you have got to do it quite quickly because you don't have a lot of time just before you start interviewing them. So it is one of those things, you've got to find something that you can kind of connect on, isn't it? And sort of ask them about that. So you said that you've gone to quite a lot of small hall shows and then the big ones as well. Can you tell me, in your opinion, like the pros and cons of going to each of those as media and what you found good about both of them, and what you thought as more of the negatives about both of them?
Well, in terms of the small hall, I wouldn't say there's anything negative per se. The only thing you could say is if you are trying to get, a career in media, then it's hard to like get the views, especially if you're, using like, your YouTube and social media platforms, because most people gravitate towards the stars. But then I personally separate that. That's something else. Because I'm not wholeheartedly invested in the idea of making a career out of this. Me and Dave, we discussed this and we said, let's never lose sight of why we're doing this. We're doing this because we love boxing. And I look at a lot of our colleagues who do it because it's their job. Well, they don't particularly enjoy it. And in fact, some of our sort of elitist colleagues who come from major, newspapers and TV companies, I've heard them, or some of them actually said to me, quite honestly, we don't even like boxing. This is just our assignment for the weekend. I'd rather be at football or the NFL or whatever. So, in that sense, me going to a small hall show, generally, I wouldn't say there's any downside to it. It's better because it's more intimate. You're closer to action, guaranteed to practically be ringside. You'll probably get access to all the fighters you want. and you get to speak to them all. Another benefit of small hall shows is it is a good way of getting yourself known in the industry, because as you probably know, boxing is a really small industry. So you will see a lot of major personalities even at the small hall shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah? Sometimes some of the superstars, some of their friends or fighters from the same gym as them, when they're making their debut, it'll be at a small hall show. And that fight will turn up at the small hall show. So, you know, there's things like that which are a benefit. So you can meet them, you get known. You know, there's been events where I've got into where my name hasn't been down for the main events, but simply because I'm so recognizable from the amount of small hall shows I've done, the security know me. So when my name's not down, they're like, "Oh no, it don't matter. We know you're here for media. Go on in." So it really helps in that way in terms of getting yourself known. And you know, to be fair, people in the industry, I think they do recognize, you know, your efforts. You know, someone like Frank Warren, he always greets me now. He doesn't know my name, but simply because he sees me all the time at this, you know, he doesn't just do the big shows. He still does the small shows. You'll call, and he will see me there, and you know, I've become a regular face there, and you know, so it is a great way of getting contacts and making your name in the industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
As for the big shows, of course, the downside of it is that you know, the competitiveness of it. It's so difficult. You yourself know, you've seen me at these big events. I've got very little patience to you know, to try and jump onto that treadmill. It takes a certain type of personality to succeed in that environment, and I don't think I've got it, and that's okay. Because like I said, I don't think a lot of our colleagues who are hell-bent on being a success, I don't think they're really enjoying the process. I don't see how you can enjoy it. So that's probably the most, you know, the biggest downside to it. But I've learned how to navigate that. It's okay. I still enjoy it. And of course, when you're there ringside for the really big fights and you know, you're absorbing that atmosphere, nothing can beat that, and it's all worthwhile.
No, absolutely. The fact that you've been watching boxing for so long, I'm really intrigued to find out from you how you think boxing has changed since you started watching it when you were like 9-10 years old up to today, in terms of the industry, the fighters, the kind of fights that are being made. Just what do you think has changed from when you started watching it to now?
Oh, for me, the biggest change has got to be the shift in the power balance. Growing up, it was like 90% American dominated.
Okay.
Yeah. British and European fighters were generally seen as a joke. The best of them would invariably get battered by the best Americans. And the Americans usually did it without breaking much sweat. So that was that's probably been the biggest shift. Yeah, we've seen the sport decline in the US, but vastly increase worldwide.
Yeah.
But overall, you've got to say it's probably for the benefit of the sport. I'm sure the Americans won't agree with that, but that's the biggest change I've seen. Yeah, and it's worked out well for us because we're on the right side of the Atlantic. And of course, you know, there is things like, you know, the accessibility, because, you know, for people like us as fans, fan media. But I don't think you can say that's necessarily a boxing specific change, because that's happened worldwide in every industry, every form of entertainment now. So that is a big change. Like I said, I mean, how many people get their information from magazines and what have you now? Not many. So that is a big change.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the best fight that you've been to, and I'm talking about like atmosphere, enjoyment from when you started watching fights, so the one that you've been to live, which one would you say that it is?
Oh God. You know, I'm sure there's recency bias in this, but you know, my memory is ain't great anymore. Well, I would probably have to go with in terms of all round. I'd say probably Wardley Clark.
Okay.
The atmosphere that night at the O2 was absolutely electric. Because what are the other major stadium fights? Obviously, AJ's had a few, and I've been to a couple in Saudi, and yeah, the atmosphere isn't the same there. So yeah, if you're talking about like a big arena event, yeah, it'd probably have been that one that I was at.
Yeah.
But again, I think there is recency bias. I might have to go through all my fight nights I've been to and actually try and jog my memory.
Yeah, no, absolutely. People are calling Riyadh the home of boxing now, or that it will become. What do you think? What's your thoughts on that? Because obviously that is the way that, you know, Saudi want it to be. The atmosphere, as you said, is not matching the atmosphere in the UK and maybe in other European, you know, countries yet. Do you think it can get there?
It can, yeah, it can. I personally don't think it will. I don't want to say that in terms of the atmosphere, don't get me wrong, the atmosphere in Riyadh, it isn't bad. Yes, it's a lot of the fights, the arena's half empty, but you get that in the UK as well.
Yeah.
You got to remember, I've also been to fight nights in Europe, and you get the same thing there. One thing that's consistent is you only get a great atmosphere when there's a fighter with a very big home field support.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now, Saudi Arabia does not have any native stars yet. And I'm inclined to think it will probably take decades for them to. And then obviously there's the Ziad and Mohammed Alalek, who fought recently, a couple of them. But they're early on in their careers. It's a tall order for them to get to anywhere near championship level. And that's not a criticism. That's everywhere. Because you look at the Philippines, boxing got kicked off in the Philippines when Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier fought the Thriller in Manila in 1976, the year I was born, incidentally. They didn't start producing greats until, Manny Pacquiao, Nonito Donaire. So you're talking about from when a sport takes root in a country, you are probably looking at decades before they start to produce like the top level competitors. And that's presuming it really does take root. Saudi Arabia, again, it's got a much smaller population than the Philippines, so it will take a lot longer. So anyway, let's see that. On the other hand, they've got a lot of money, but no, I think it will be a long time before Riyadh becomes any sort of genuine power in the sport, whether for putting on events or for producing top level fighters, because AJ and Fury could draw big crowds over there because they're superstars. No one else will be able to. When they're gone, put it this way, who fights in Saudi Arabia without fighting them two, there won't be big crowds. So yeah, it's hey, listen, I'll say as a boxing fan, it's great we're getting the fights we want. Long may it continue, but I think it will scale back when they see that they're not getting the dividends that they were hoping for.
Yeah, I wonder how many UK fans actually travel out to Riyadh for those fights. Like, I don't know what the numbers are, but yeah, I wonder how many have been doing that.
I don't think there's many who do travel. Again, I'm not a businessman. I would have thought the Saudis need to look at that, have maybe better.
I mean, I was
packages.
thinking they should have something like that. They already have Saudi Airlines as one of the sponsors, I think. Why can't they do some discounted, airline tickets for anyone going for Riyadh season? It would make sense.
Because it doesn't come cheap. Flying there isn't cheap. So, and especially a sport like boxing, where I've experienced this, where fights can be cancelled on the week. They can even be cancelled on the day of the fight.
Yeah.
So if you're spending all that money, you're going to have to spend even more for flexible rates of flights and accommodation. So they really need to look at that, I think.
Yeah, very true. So Rah, who is your greatest of all time? Do you have one?
Greatest of all time, what, boxer?
Yeah.
I'm going to be a typical boring old school guy and go with the obvious. The greatest of all time, I would have to say, is Sugar Ray Robinson.
Okay.
Because now you've got to remember there's a difference between how good someone is and how great someone is.
Okay.
Because I think our brother Spencer Fearon made this differentiation where he said that Floyd Mayweather was better, Manny Pacquiao was greater, meaning his achievements were more, even though when they fought, Floyd beat him. So Floyd was better, but he did not push his abilities to the limits he could have. Now, Sugar Ray Robinson.
Greatness, and what does that? What's the criteria for greatness that Manny Pacquiao achieved that Floyd didn't?
The achievements in terms of how many weight classes did he win world titles in? Yeah. So first world title down at flyweight and won world titles all the way up to welterweight, and then became, I think, the oldest welterweight champion ever, the only one ever to win one in his 40s. That's quite an achievement because welterweight is such a tough division for a man middle-aged, so 10 to 15 years past his physical prime, to still be able to win a world title. That's the greatness of Manny Pacquiao. Why I say Sugar Ray Robinson, he fought at a time when there was only 8 world titles. Yeah. Now, in them days when you were moving up a weight class, you really were fighting someone way, way bigger than you. When these guys in the modern era are doing it, especially with the weigh-in at least 24 hours before the fight, it's almost become a race to see just how much you can dehydrate and rehydrate overnight. And, the amount of weight between weight classes is so minimal, often it might just be a day's worth of heavy eating. Yeah. So it's like, well, are you really fighting someone bigger? Whereas someone like Sugar Ray Robinson, when he went from welterweight to middleweight, he was really fighting someone bigger than him. And, Sugar Ray, he effectively was the guy that, I guess, formed that Afro-American style, the East Coast, Midwest style that is combining their tremendous athletic ability, but with the really deep understanding of the sweet science. That's why, actually, I think, although, like I said, it's great that boxing's become much more worldwide. John David Jackson, when I interviewed him, he did actually say this. He's worried that American boxing, the art of American boxing, it could end up being a lost art. And I think that'd be really sad if it does. Yeah, because that there aren't as many of those old school coaches that have that sort of knowledge of the American style of professional boxing. So although you've got all of these former Soviet guys, and from Russia, Central Asia, who've now come into the professional game, they come in with their Soviet amateur style. And it's great. You know, some of them are great practitioners of it, like Bivol, etc., etc. But yeah, there's a danger that some of the subtleties of the American style might get if you know, if the sport does continue to decline there. So
if it was harder to get like a title or a world title back in the day, would you say that the caliber of fighters now, some of who may have titles and world title belts, is not as high, it's not as good as the previous generation of fighters?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, it depends what you mean by not as high. I think the skill level, in terms of the sweet science of boxing, I think it is less. It is less overall. There are still a few American fighters that I think have got it. People like Shakur Stevenson, Tank Davis. There's probably a few others. Keyshawn Davis. Yeah. Mostly those guys from the sort of East Coast and Midwest of America. Right. But overall, it's less. But I wouldn't say, sorry, overall, it's less in terms of skill, but it's not less overall in standards, because the physicalities of fighters has improved.
Okay.
All this modern nutrition and making weight and rehydrating, and not to mention special supplements which aren't detected by the testing. Physically, they probably are. They're probably better physical specimens than men used to be. I mean, you look at some of the ex-heavyweight champs from the 50s and earlier. Jack Dempsey or Rocky Marciano, in the modern era, they'd be super middleweights. Really? I'd say Jack Dempsey was the same size as someone like Callum Smith. But in them days, they didn't do all this, you know, knowing how to dehydrate and rehydrate your system, you know, and all of that, nonsense. You know, so, yeah.
Gosh. So we're coming to the end of the year. What was your one boxing highlight of 2024?
Oh, without doubt, it's easy. Being at the Usyk Fury fight in Riyadh. The reason being, it was for as long as I've followed this sport, I've always had in mind I will want to be there when the next time an undisputed heavyweight champion is crowned. Never would have imagined it'd be in Riyadh. I always thought growing up that I'm probably going to have to go back to America one day, which I did not look forward to. I don't even know if I'll be allowed in the country. But Riyadh came to my rescue and hosted it. Yeah, like I said, would never have imagined a Brit would have been involved. But yeah, it was great to be there for that historic event and witness Alexander Usyk crowned as the first undisputed heavyweight champion since Lennox Lewis. So yeah.
I want to know who is the most exciting fighter for you right now, because we have obviously a group chat, and a lot of times you talk about how boring fighters are. So I want to know who is not boring for you, who is really exciting.
What, in the ring?
Yeah, current professional fighter.
Without doubt, for me, it's Moses Itulma.
Okay.
Because this kid is a talent. Again, the sort you wait a lifetime for. He's not only shown he's got the talent in the ring, but that the mindset of the kid. He's 19 years old, and yeah, he's more mature than a lot of people our age. He's focused.
I think, didn't he, the other day?
Yeah, and the fact that he actually has the cojones to actually say, yeah, I want to target Mike Tyson's record. You know, that's what greatness is made for. And I really hope they don't hold him back.
Do you think it's a good thing for him to go for it, though? Like, isn't that a bit too much too soon?
No, for an ordinary fighter, yes. But I think Brits have got this idea of, you know, they're always conservative about, you know, they want to hold back genius. they don't do that in other parts of the world. Well, actually, come to think of it, I remember Maradona at the 1978 World Cup. The coach didn't let him go because they said it's too much pressure for a 17-year-old. But the rumor was that the coach Bilardo, he actually didn't want Maradona to take credit for them winning the World Cup. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, like I said, these these prodigies, I think let them off the leash. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it needs to be managed well. Because when I first spoke to him at his at the press conference to launch his career, I did say that to him. There's always the danger of burnout when you sort of hit this level too young. And he goes, yeah, look, I'm aware of that, but if I can get that title, then yeah, I will have to manage my career carefully. So when a 19-year-old is that mature, and with Frank Warren in his corner, I think they'd manage it well. I think the key is, though, how the politics of the heavyweight division play out. Because if Usyk does retire or vacates the belt, then he can pick up one of the vacant belts.
Yeah.
And if he can pick up the WBO title, I'm sure Frank Warren can have a word with their board and say, yeah, look, keep the big guys like Martin Bakole, keep him down the rankings for a year or two. Yeah. You know what I mean? But no, I'm so excited by that for a young heavyweight to burst onto the scene. Because as you said in our group chat, I'd like these older fighters, including Usyk. I'd like them to wrap up now because they just hold the whole division up. This is a young man's sport. They've made their money. Move on. Let the next generation take over.
So tell me about one fight that you want to see happen then in 2025.
Ooh. One fight that I want to see happen in 2025. Actually, it's easy. Why am I even thinking about it? I want to see Bud Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez at super middleweight. Yeah, that's the fight I want to see.
Where would you like it to happen? It would be in America, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? Like I said, I don't know if I can go to America, so I'd like that fight.
But go to America. You can't say that and not tell people why you can't go to America.
Well, I don't know the reason, but yeah. I've got reason to believe my passport will flag something up, but no, maybe a better adventure for me would be if it's in Mexico. How about have it in Mexico City, the Azteca Stadium, and I can a whole load of childhood memories come back and watch probably the best fight in boxing. Yeah,
that would be amazing. Thank you so much, Rah, for your time. It's been amazing catching up with you. Thank you, everyone, for joining and for commenting. Abbas says Canelo destroys him. Well, if it happens, we'll have to see. Thank you,
Abbas will tune into any show just to defend Canelo. So got to admire his relentlessness.
Merry Christmas, all stay blessed. Thank you, Robin. And Eric was saying big up Rah. So thank you so much, Rah. Can you let everyone know how they can follow your journey and follow the work that you're doing?
Yeah, it's my handle on Instagram and Twitter is Rah_Hokum, and on YouTube and Facebook we've got our channel Punchout Boxing, where as I said, I speak to the movers and shakers in the industry. So give us a follow.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining, and we will catch you all next time. See you later.
Happy New Year.
It's another band. All the Muslim cars now with your bag it up. I start my card with a sweet one bliss. Someone flicks me a bag it up. So it's another one, yeah. It's a full strand, yeah. Oh, it's another one.